So my article today, I'm gonna try to blast through it because it's a little bit long and we're a little over time, but let's get right down to it. New Jersey awards $12 million in grants to 48 marijuana businesses with focus on aiding communities harmed by drug war. New Jersey is awarding 12 million in grant money to 48 licensed cannabis operators to help them start and expand their businesses. It's part of the state's effort to remove barriers to entry to the legal industry, especially among people from communities disproportionately harmed by the drug war. The $250,000 award to each of the licenses represents the largest cannabis social equity grant of its kind in the nation, the New Jersey Economic Development Authority said Wednesday, as it and other state and local officials announced the new phase of funding. The amount is twice what was originally planned for the grant round. Initially, they were going to select only 24 companies to receive the money, but further allocations of funds by the governor allowed to double the number of awardees. It's important that we build on our efforts to support the businesses seeking to enter and grow within the emerging market. The Cannabis Equity Grant Program allows us to simultaneously expand the pool of cannabis businesses in our state while also focusing on the communities most impacted by the unethical war on drugs. So joint venture money is meant to assist adult use cannabis businesses with capital. Um, I really want to get down to the meat of this because this article is very, very long. 40% of the funds were earmarked for qualifying social equity applicants. Another 5% was allocated for businesses in specifically designed impact zones. Second phase, known as the Seed Equity Grant, will launch later this year and will provide another $150,000 apiece along with technical assistance, according to the release of that funding. 100% will be designated for social equity applicants. Technical assistance will provide licensing, process training, assistance in developing cannabis business teams, financial management, guidance on securing investors, develop of supply chain management, et cetera, et cetera. So they go on to talk about how amazing they are. And I think I should really just sort of cut to the chase on this. Scrolling to the very last couple paragraphs of this article, talked about California last month opening its application for 48 million in marijuana tax-funded community reinvestment grants, which supports job placement, legal assistance, treatment of mental health and substance use disorders, et cetera, et cetera. That program, which awards grants up to 3 million, is funded exclusively through state cannabis revenue. Okay. So I want to sort of get to the meat of this, which is there's two parts of this article. The first is they're talking about grant funding for social equity businesses. And let me just go on record here, both as a verified social equity applicant and as somebody where the government spent six figures to lock me up for selling cannabis and then went and gave me six figures so that I could sell cannabis. And I've received substantial amounts of grant money to stand up a business that unfortunately, due to regulatory issues and the inability for me to move that permit from one address to the other, is still non-operational. This last round of grant funding in California for myself, I spent $72,000. I submitted the receipts, and the local OOC said, "Oh, sorry," and they didn't give me the money. Even though on three previous grant rounds, I did the exact same thing with the exact same timing and got reimbursed. So the challenge with some of these grant funding issues is that when they're administered on a local level, there's not a lot of continuity in the way they administer these funds round to round. There's no appeals process. If you don't like their decision, I emailed and asked them to give me a call, set up a telephone appointment. They didn't even do that. And I've talked to the head of that department in San Francisco, and I mean I was I wanted to complain about it to Nicole Elliott last week, but not making it about me. Here's the issue: when a state like New Jersey trumpets that it's the first and the best and the biggest and the this, it again gets back to this hubris around how they think that markets are going to do it better and different. The truth is, $250,000 as a single grant round of funding for a social equity business may be the biggest, but that's based on a single round. It doesn't mean that that's the most money that's been deployed into these programs, and doesn't mean that this is the markets that had the most of this. And the thing that we have to really think about is not the dollar amount so much as what is the percentage of tax revenue from the regulated industry that is being allocated to support social equity businesses. When we look at it through that lens, it's still pretty small, pretty pathetic. The other thing that I think is really, really important about this is that in the lower part of the article, it 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 goes from talking about grant funding for social equity businesses to taxes from regulated cannabis and the other great, amazing programs that those taxes are being used to support that often have very little to do with regulated cannabis and have a lot to do with just sort of bettering of society. And so that's a really challenging one for me because I get back up on my soapbox to talk about how the draconian tax structure is the biggest issue in regulated cannabis. And so the problem with these taxes is they tax the heck out of regulated cannabis, but then they give it to some good causes. And who has a problem with orphans with a cleft palate, right? Like nobody's going to go against some of the uses of these funds, but we've created stakeholders who are recipients of this tax money who don't want to see tax reform in regulated cannabis because they're benefiting from the taxes that are strangling the industry. So my takeaway is social equity grant funding. Yes, let's do more. Let's maybe not give ourselves a pat on the back so much, New Jersey, and let's see how your regulated adult use industry progresses before we start saying we're the best and the biggest and the this and this and that. And when it comes to taking these taxes in states like California or elsewhere, where we're taking money out of the regulated industry to support other important causes, I think that sets us up for having less incremental tax reform over time. This is Yarrow Kubrin, High at 9 News, Friday morning. What do you guys think?
Man, that's a lot, Yarrow. That's a lot to swallow right there. That's a lot.
Luckily, I can't hear you,
Oh,
Jason.
that's a lot to swallow right there, Yarrow. Jeez Louise.
2
Man,
cups of coffee,
I
baby.
feel like, man, all this money that's getting get out. Where are they getting all this money from, Yarrow? Where is it? Where's the source of the money?
Well, I mean, aside from the fact that the government is off the gold standard and prints whatever it wants, um, the I believe that the social equity funding in New Jersey probably comes out of the general fund. I don't know. I don't spend enough time in New Jersey. I can't tell you the source of funds. I know in California, for example, social equity grant funding comes from GoBiz at the state level and then is distributed to local municipalities that have a social equity cannabis program. But again, I think we have two really major issues here. How much money are we really giving to support new businesses, social equity businesses? What does that look like? How is that expressed as a percentage of the total addressable market of regulated cannabis? And then the second is when you tax the heck out of cannabis and then you give it to all these amazing causes, you create all of these entrenched interest groups, noble interest groups who don't want to see tax reform and regulated cannabis because they're
Mm-hmm.
benefiting from the current status quo. And that's a problem because that doesn't allow regulated cannabis to have substantial tax reform over time and lower the tax structure, which ultimately will increase the regulated market and decrease the unregulated market.
Got it. Yeah, no, I'm with you. That is very for sure. Like people that are benefiting from tax revenue definitely don't want that tax revenue to dissipate at all whatsoever. I mean, just look at our federal government and the gross size of it is right now. You can tell that just from that. You don't even need the social equity applicant to tell you that.
They're like hummingbirds to sugar water. Ooh, give me
Exactly.
that tax
Yeah.
money.
Oh, let me get some pork on the side of that plate right there, on the side of that amendment. Gretchen knows all about all
Yeah.
this extra pork, but nonetheless, we
You
got to
know,
keep
I miss pork. We don't do enough pork anymore. Pork was a good thing. People
pork was
libs
a
didn't
good
see it
thing.
that way. I am not a big fan of. I don't have a problem with this grant to start. If this is a running thing to keep these businesses going, that's not a good thing.
Mhm.
And there has to be a better way for these businesses to sustain, like certain deductions and things of that nature. I don't know, but I don't. I'm not a big. We'll see. Here's some money. See what you can do with it.
Mhm.
But at some point, the free market has to start flourishing.
That
we
is a
don't have a
fact.
free market. As long as Apple is able to offshore its corporate entities to Ireland and pay zero taxes, we have a market that favors those who are sophisticated and resourced. And all this does is level the playing field. We don't have a free market. Let's be very clear about that. Most industries have substantially benefited from government support, whether it is farming, technology. You can't pick a single vertical that isn't sucking off those tax benefits or economic incentives that are created by our government.
And you can't pick another vertical that has allowed social equity to run it. So I don't
Exactly.
understand why all of a sudden cannabis is the one industry that needs help social equity wise. How about doing this for other industries? Cannabis is the only one where they're saying we need money to get started. What's wrong with restaurants? What's wrong with, working it with for ag and other places? Why is cannabis? And don't give me the war on drugs, yada yada yada. I've heard that song and dance. I
No,
get it.
the answer is
The
that
answer
because
no
cannabis
other no
qualified from
other industry
regulation at a federal
no other
level,
industry
state programs are
requires
designed
this.
offset the benefits that other industries have federally? I mean, I just mic dropped you. Can you say anything to that?
I don't
I
know
can
if you did
say
that.
agree to disagree, Yarrow. Out of your mind.
Yeah, I think you're out of your mind on this
Oh,
one too,
and look at the
Yarrow.
time,
Yeah.
1:03. Ugh, I
Yeah.
gotta go.
Yep.